Hey everyone, welcome back to the Athlete CEO podcast, where we empower you to unlock the greatest driver of your net worth, your human capital. I'm your host, Eric Averill, and I'm joined alongside by my co-host and brother, Brandon Averill. We are the co-founders of AWM Capital, where we partner with athletes, founders, and VCs to help them unlock the full potential of their wealth for maximum impact. And each week on the Athlete CEO podcast, we feature select excerpts from interviews with the trailblazers, the elite, those at the top of their field and the best at their craft, with the goal to curate the best practices so that you can leverage to unlock your human capital. And on today's episode, we're finishing up our conversation with our good buddy, Joe Schmidt. The previous episodes have been absolutely gold. You have to go back and listen to them. But this one may have been my favorite so far. And for those of you who have not had an opportunity to listen into those conversations, just real quick, Joe is a former Notre Dame football captain, was an investor at one of the biggest VC firms that there is, Excel, and now is an operator where he runs strategy and sales at Ethos Life, a startup technology insurance company that's raised over $100 million from Sequoia, Excel, Google Ventures, and the likes. And in this installment, Joe takes us inside what he calls how to optimize your human capital and optimize your life.
You're right, Eric. I mean, there's a lot of practical information in there. You know, what I took away were he's got 4 pillars, and that's what really resonated with me. Those 4 pillars: health, professional, spiritual, and social. And to me, you know, it was just a great framework to bring it all back to, hey, how do I organize my life, my priorities? How do I make sure that, you know, these 4 things are all having attention paid to them? I don't think there's any illusion that there's a balance there, but he talks about being intentional every single day that he's hitting one of those. It was personally convicting to me. I definitely left there thinking about, hey, how do I make sure that I'm looking at all these different areas of my life to optimize my human potential? And then preach more about what you and I are always talking about with our clients, right? Have a plan, execute the plan. And this framework with these four pillars was just fantastic, in my opinion.
We've known Joe since literally since he was a young boy. And then this is a guy who goes to an iconic high school at Mater Dei High School in Southern California, walks on the team at Notre Dame and ends up being a captain there. That doesn't happen without having intentionality and goals and plans. And one of the things that stood out was saying, hey, do you have someone who's maybe already traveled the road that you've been on? And he used that analogy of, you know, if you're standing on a train going 80 miles an hour, it doesn't look like you're going very fast. But for those who are watching it pass by, can see that bullet train going. And it's so important, I think, about what we do on a daily basis, right? Like, that's the role of an advisor and an expert. And a lot of times from our former professional athlete backgrounds of having that coach. Yeah, I got to still execute every day, but I just can't see certain things without having advisors around me. And so this is all about building out your team, making sure that you have qualified experts alongside you on this journey. If you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And so with that, we hope you guys enjoy the last segment of our conversation with our dear friend, Joe Schmidt. What I'm curious about is what's cultivated this intense desire for learning for you? Have you always been a lifelong learner?
I mean, like, you know, this isn't the dress rehearsal, right? You know, this is the show. Like, we got one shot, you know, as humans in one lifetime. And so for me, like, I'm an intensely curious person. I want to, you know, I'm passionate about that learning process, and I find it really fun. You know, I love learning about people and, like, tell me about your business. Like, you know, I knew pretty quickly I didn't want to do sales and trading, but I actually really enjoyed learning about that. So I think, like, instead of looking at, like, learning as, like, this chore, look at it as, like, I've got one life. You know, do I want to, like, sit playing Fortnite? You know, like, and, like, whatever it might be, or just, like, getting drunk or whatever. And, like, don't get me wrong, I like drinking just as much as the next guy, but I just think that there's, like, an element of, you know, we got this one shot and, you know, this one opportunity. I'm going to quote Eminem, So, I don't know.
Of course, we all know how it worked out for B Rabbit, so I think those are some wise words that you left us there. But as a curious person who enjoys learning across so many different domains, what are your go-to resources, or do you have a specific approach of how you go about learning?
It's a great question. I mean, I'm like a big time history guy. So like this, the books that I'm reading right now are a couple different ones on World War II that I just think they're fascinating. And like, I really enjoy like listening to these, whether it's an audiobook or reading, like how the decisions were made, in like high intensity situations by some of the greatest leaders and men that have ever lived, men and women that have ever lived. So I think that's something that like, I'm still into. I've kind of always been into that. On like the, tech side, I mean, there's a handful of resources that I guess we could kind of go over in terms of like how I try to stay up on, my kind of technology side. Right. But yeah, I'd say like, just like I don't like enjoy the routine of like every morning I'm going to get up and I'm going to read the same like 6 newspapers, or like I'm going to read the same like 17 like different blog posts every day. Like I actually think that it's more sustainable and more enjoyable to just like think about it as, I'm going to learn something today and I'm going to like try to, find something that I find really interesting. And then I'm going to dive into it and I'm going to continue to, just explore these topics. So I'm less of like a, routine. I'm going to like punish myself into like learning this, and more into like hey, I want to actually learn this because it's fun. And this is my time in my life and I want to use my time this way.
One of the other things that I'm curious about that I want to dive into is, how do you approach your life outside of work? Of course, as former elite athletes, one of the things that we believe in is high performance. And we believe that it should carry far beyond, right, the field or the boardroom, into our personal lives. And so I'd love to hear how you think about optimizing all aspects of your life.
Yeah, no, I'm happy you asked. Something I think about a lot. I think of like life as like a multiplicative series. So like I kind of break my life into 4 kind of core pillars of whether it's like athletic or health, academic, or, whatever that, your kind of professional goals might be, spiritual, and then the social, as well. Right. And I think like if any of those kind of core pillars goes to zero, being a multiplicative series, the entire value of the equation goes to zero. Right. And it doesn't make sense, just like anything times 0 is 0. Right. So, for me, I try to think about that as like, what is the end result of these 4 pillars, like trying to be right now? Like, what's the end goal that I'm trying to kind of create and I'm optimizing for? And then you kind of change the mix within each one of those things, but you can't ever like totally disregard any of them. And so like, that's something I constantly think about. So like, for example, like I obviously, when I was training to be, just trying to play football competitively, like that was the thing that I was obviously optimizing for, but I still like couldn't let my grades go to 0. I was going to flunk out of school. And so now like, it's like, okay, I don't work out for an hour and a half or 2 hours a day. I do, 20 to, 15 to 45 minutes of like, high intensity or Tabata training. But I do it every single day, or like I go for a 15-minute yoga or whatever. I do something every single day, just because I'm not going to let myself, let that go to 0. Same thing goes true for my family or my girlfriend or my relationship with my God, whoever your God may be. I just think that it's really important that you kind of keep this holistic, viewpoint. And I think when you forget these other things, that's when burnout happens, right? Just like focusing only on this business. And then you wake up like 6 months later, you're like, shit, like what am I doing with my time? Like, like the world is passing me by. So I think it's kind of a way to combat that.
That's great advice, great model, obviously, that anybody can emulate. I'm curious, where did that come from? It doesn't seem like something, maybe it is, maybe you're just a genius, but, to come up with with kind of that, it's probably been modeled somewhere else. Mentors, coaches, your parents, where did that come from?
To be honest, I don't even remember. Like my dad and we laughed about this, I think right before this started. One of you guys, talked about the 3 goals I wrote down when I was a little kid. My dad has been a big goal guy my entire life. And so then like, I kind of just started thinking about these goals in sectors. And then I don't know, maybe this is like 10 years ago, it kind of clicked to me that like, I had to optimize for something, but I couldn't disregard the other things. So I don't know. And I think like so I already knew that. I'm trying to remember, I think in a math class, maybe it just like dawned on me that like, this is the perfect example of a multiplicative series. Like, it's just like, that's life. So I don't know, maybe I stole it from somebody else. Just making shit up.
I like it. Well, I mean, it kind of leads to, and maybe you do or don't have, I mean, I'm certain you have mentors in your life, but I'd love you to, talk about if there is, do you have official people that you go to maybe in each of those pillars, or even if they're not in those pillars? And then, if you don't, even just kind of broadly mentors that you have, what's your relationship with them? When do you turn to them? What's that look like for you?
Yeah, well, I'm like, again, like, I don't know, maybe I hope this is coming through, that I'm not trying to be an egotistical ass, but like, I really do feel lucky that like I have a lot of people that, have kind of helped steward me along the way. And so you guys, I think, both know my dad, but my dad is, he's my hero. And, from when I was a little kid, like he's been the model of what a man could be. And I just hope I'm like 10% of what he is eventually. So I think that like him and my mom, obviously not to discount what she's done for me as well. And then, I've got fantastic family sisters that have all pushed me my entire life, that have been better than me in every single way. Competitiveness has been great. But then like, I've been really lucky too with, my brother-in-law. But then like, I've also found through this process of, going out there and putting myself out there and trying to just meet people. Like, I've been really lucky to come across some really unbelievable people, who I won't like, embarrass and put in this podcast. But, I think it's really important to just find those people that you can like, totally trust. One thing that's it. I think this is like, I don't know this. So this is something I'm 100% stealing, from one of my mentors, but he talks about something called, Galilean relativity. And I think it's a beautiful model of looking at, a system can only be fully understood if you're not a part of that system, right? So the classic model is like guy on a train holding a baseball. To him, the baseball is not moving, but to us standing off the train, it's going 80 miles an hour. And so when you think about your life, and, the 100 years that, whatever you may be allotted or whatever it is, it's impossible to understand, 28 or 35 or, 60, until you're past that point, right? And you're like, I was a dumbass at 16, or, I can't believe I made that investment, at, whatever it was. And so I think for me, like, I think, I try to find people that are off the train that I'm on, because to me, like or to them, my problems seem elementary. And then the only other way you can do it is try to imagine yourself at the end of your life, looking back and like what you're going to regret. So anyway, I think that's, again, that's not my model. I stole that. But I think it's a beautiful way of looking at it.
Galilean relativity. This is why you went to Notre Dame and I went to ASU. You are far wiser than I was at every stage of life. What have you learned through this time? Has there been a silver lining of COVID for you? I know that that you're actually relocated down into Southern California right now. How has your perspective shifted during this time of COVID?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to like find the positive in all of this. And one thing that I've realized is, and I don't know if I've realized this, but it's just like put more emphasis on it. Like, life is so damn short. And when you're given this, something like this, it reminds you of that. And so some people have said like, oh, what are you learning during COVID? Like, are you trying to like learn a language or a, musical instrument? It's like, actually, no, like, for me, like, I've spent like the extra time that I've got, I've tried to like pour it into family. And, I feel like, during whether it was, sports and all the commitments that came with that, or, just being really passionate about my career and not being, close to family. I've tried to just use this as like a total reset point for that and just like really just invest heavily there. And so like, I don't know, that's been the thing that I've actually tried to change most.
This is not the dress rehearsal. I absolutely love that. This episode hit so close to home for me, especially when Joe was sharing his 4-pillar framework of health, professional, spiritual, and social. And I know that I'm going to take pen to paper, and I'd encourage you to do the same to define what does success look like in those 4 categories. And man, that was a great way to end our conversation in interviews with Joe Schmidt. But you guys are not going to want to miss out on our next interview with the co-founder of Go Wild. It's the best hunting, fishing, and outdoors community social media platform on the market today. The founder, Brad Luttrell, drops absolute gold on everything he has done to take himself from having a day job to now being the co-founder of a venture-backed, fast-growing company. And so I know you guys are not going to want to miss out on that. Head over to athleteceo.com. Make sure you subscribe to the newsletter. We have put some updated resources in there for the tools that Joe Schmidt had covered and all the other interesting stuff that we've been reading, we've been writing, and we've been watching. And of course, if you guys are enjoying this podcast, please make sure that you head over, you give us a review. It not only helps us, but it helps others find this podcast that they can be benefiting from you as well. And so we love you guys. We appreciate your guys' feedback and the community that we're building over here at the Athlete CEO family. And until next time, stay humble, stay hungry, and always be a pro.